Good evening, Codger Biker is here, and I'd like to take you over my 1984 MZ TS125, which is about as restored as I'm ever going to get it. Hadn't intended to restore it, didn't know it existed. It was my actual bike in 1984 when I got it almost new. I rode it for 6 years, and then a friend of mine had it and rode it for a little while, then stuck it in a barn for 30 years. So it's 31 years since I rode this on the road, and when I got it, it was in quite some state, but I think we caught it just in time. I'll take you over what I did as a sort of final version of the video. Right, the first thing that I did was to start at the front end. Had to put a new mud guard on it. I'm going to put a couple of coats of this inside. Do that first because it's black. Grey primer. This is going to be the top coat. Double acrylic. Faster drying. Oh dear. So with this stuff in the garage, it should do for sealing it. Might as well use what I've got. Is this the right stuff for this job? Here we go, I've gone back to the original silvery grey colour. It's actually a Hyundai silver, but good enough I think. Yeah, it did look quite cool black, the whole bike black. Particularly as I've always hated these heavy, deep black side panels, which look much better on the later bikes because they're curved, but it makes the bike a little lighter weight somehow with the silver. One of the big jobs is getting the front brake to work, so new brake shoes, service the shoes, the shoe mechanism, new cable, indicators, they all work. This one needed a new lens because it was broken, and the only bulb I replaced is that one. Also, well, I remember I did change the indicator blinker unit for a new one because it was blinking too fast. That's needs to be more regular. So it's the speed for MOT, which was smashed. All the other bulbs work, which is quite amazing, really. The frame had quite bad surface rust, but nothing too severe. So I, rather than stripping it down and doing a motorbike show powder coating job, couldn't be bothered with that. I just got some spray paint and built up the layers, sanded it down, used some sort of rust proofing paint, and then used the car paint over the top. Very fine, wet and dry. Very, very fine, mainly just to key the surface for the paint. Okay, so that's 2 coats of direct to rust. Brilliant stuff, that, I like that. And then 2 coats of high gloss black, and yeah, I don't think it looks too bad at all. It's just surface rust, so it's protected that. I'm going to give it a polish when I put it back together again. The exhaust can then go back on over that, and it doesn't look like new, but it looks far better than it did before, and you can still see some patina of age. One good thing, it's a black bike with a black frame, so it's quite easy to match up. So I had to do the frame, under the seat, 2 coats of direct to rust, and then some black gloss. A bit dark in it, that's why I always work outside the garage, it's just too cramped. Well, it's somewhat better than it was. Spread it with direct to rust and then enamel paint. This new side panel, because it was missing, there's a toolkit in there as well, and the lock fitted. Added a new exhaust because the other one was absolutely shot. New foot pegs, rubbers. I've kept all the old parts actually, rather sadly, even the exhaust, because they were the parts that were on it when I actually rode it as a daily rider. So, new exhaust. I found some replacement shocks on Amazon. I could probably clean the other ones up, so I've kept those, but I've put those on because they look a bit blingy. I really don't know what kind of quality they'll be. Really, rather bizarrely, I saw these on Amazon. These were actually on Amazon, and they appear to be slightly differently wound, but we're on Amazon for a TS125 MZ rear shocks. So they were only cheap, they were £20 each. Anyway, I'm going to keep the old ones just in case, but try these out. They are more bling if nothing else. So, cleaned out the tank, that was a video. Some new handlebars. The forks painted and changed the fork oil, otherwise they are exactly as they were. Seven fluid ounces. Cleaned up the front wheel while listening to a party that my neighbours were having at the back. It was quite interesting. So the front wheel is exactly as it was. The engine, as I say, I think we caught this bike just in time because the engine had seized, but we're pretty sure it was turning over last year, so it seized during COVID. They got the bike out ready for me to collect, and then I couldn't go because of COVID, so we think it's seized a little bit. I don't think it was too serious. It's still quite smoky when it runs, but I've only ever run the bike for a few seconds at a time because of the noise, neighbours, smoke. So I'm guessing what happens is every time you run it, some fuel goes in, you leave the fuel and oil is in the crank, the petrol evaporates, which leaves the oil behind, so gradually building up a lot of oil. So hopefully on a good run that will burn away. However, if you know anything about two-strokes, you'll probably be thinking the same as me. What if the crank seals have gone? Which is a possibility, and I believe that they'll be quite difficult to change. So fingers crossed it isn't that. Anyway, that was the easy part of the bike actually. So far it was easy. The hard part was at the back end. Getting some new brake shoes to work was quite difficult, and I replaced the cable with a new one. I had to replace this plate here which holds the shoes because it was just too corroded inside. Fortunately the MZ shop could supply a new one, so that's what I've done. So I've got a new brake switch, new plate, new shoes, so the back brake is all new more or less. The wheel's the same, the rear wheel, and then the second hard job was replacing this chain cover because it was smashed. So while I was doing that I put a new chain on it, although interestingly the old chain, because it's completely sealed inside a chain guard with gaiters and rubber, it was like new when I took it off. But I changed it anyway as a matter of course, so it's had a new chain. Right, so here's a new piece. As you can see, it's got plastic all the way around, whereas this has got bits snapped off it. Chain comes in and out, and that's empty, so presumably that prizes off, and now I can swap the mechanism. Woo! The problem I've got is these gaiters are so stiff, getting them on. You see I've got the chain on, I managed to get the link through that way and get the clip on that way. This is all loose at the moment. Yeah, blimey, that was hard work. Anyway, it's on. Got to sort this gaiter out. The worm drive's working. New tyres. The others were probably legal, believe it or not, even though they were nearly 40 years old, but I didn't particularly fancy riding down the road. They were so hard and shiny. I doubt they'd have any grip at all. Car pumps, all sorts. But let's just try this. We are now fitting a rack. Holes had to be drilled. What else have I done? Well, brake light switch was replaced and that works fine. I've changed the number plate because the old one was cracked and broken. Added a mud flap. So I've spent about 6 weeks on this, on and off, and the only problems I've really had is the carburettor, which always leaked a little bit, basically because it has a vent, and so it lets petrol evaporates from it all the time. I do have a replacement carb, which is some sort of copy. I don't really want to put that on, so I will tidy that up in the coming weeks. So I will reevaluate that as I go in the coming weeks. Basically, it's just been going over everything, getting everything working, and it's been quite good fun. I don't like old bikes. The only reason I've done this is because this was my actual bike. If it hadn't been, I wouldn't have touched it with a barge pole. So, the original cap, the original clocks. It's on 12,159 miles and 1/10. It'll be interesting to see what that says in a year from now. It may not say any more than that, who knows. There's the original tax disc from 1991, last time it was taxed. You can see new tyre on the front. And yeah, I restored the mud guards to silver. Sean had painted them black, which in a way I quite liked, but I kind of thought, well, you know, they were silver originally, let's put it back to how it was. So it's not a nuts and bolts restoration, it's an honest, light renovation with as much of it as possible original, and even the parts that took off, they could go back on. So that's it. That's my TS125 Elliot the Camel from 1984. I'm sure he will outlive me. 37 years he's been in my life one way or the other. Where will I be 37 years from now? Spirit in the sky, I think. And on that positive note, Codger Biker is out.